algorithm.
You probably clicked on this video thinking that I'm one of those Joker fanboys that was first exposed to the series thanks to his inclusion in Smash Ultimate, played Persona 5, and jumped on the Persona bandwagon. But nah, motherfucker, I've been playing Persona since the game still carried the SMT branding. And back in June, when it was leaked that Persona 4 Golden was coming to Steam, I jumped in day one. It had been a while since I had played Persona 4, and having never owned a Vita, this was finally my chance to experience its remastered version for the first time. And seeing as how Vita emulation is pretty, shit, an official PC port was my ticket. So I guess I gotta come clean. Before now, I never actually finished Persona 4. I managed to find my old save file on a PS2 memory card and saw that I had only gotten up to the part right after saving Nato. But, that was years ago, and a lot of this Persona 4 Golden run felt like it was my first time playing because, well, number one, I forgot a lot, and two, there's quite a bit of new content. In fact, I wasn't always sure what was new and what was from the original. And with that, let's get started with the review. Oh yeah, and like and subscribe or something. Persona 4 has sort of that middle child stigma of the new Persona series, or Neon Persona, whatever they call it. Persona 3 was a breakout hit with its mix of dungeon crawling and life sim, which was, a breath of fresh air for a lot of us JRPG fans. However, Persona 5 was the entry that brought Persona to a much wider audience, and hell, made turn-based combat cool again. Persona 4, however, I don't know, I kind of see it as a knee-jerk reaction on Atlus's part to continue the momentum that was created from Persona 3's success. It used the same engine as Persona 3, it reused many assets, and released at the very tail end of the PlayStation 2's life cycle. Very much like Final Fantasy IX did on the PlayStation. And like Final Fantasy IX, it wasn't figured out until years later just how fucking awesome of a gem it is, seeing as how Persona 4 was released a full 2 years after the PlayStation 3's launch. In fact, I don't think people really figured out its greatness until Golden came out in 2012 on the Vita. Now, I bet you're confused. If I'm singing Persona 4's praises, then why am I, according to the thumbnail, so disappointed? Well, buckle up, buckaroos, because I'm going to tell you. As with the other Persona games that people actually care about, you start out as the new disturbingly silent kid in town. It isn't long before a couple murders take place in that small town of Inaba, and it's up to you and your new friends to solve them. But of course, this being a JRPG, and a Japanese one at that, solving the mystery involves bizarre supernatural elements, in which your party ventures into a world only accessible by entering televisions. However, it's dangerous in there, and our hero's only way of survival is by awakening their personas. The main character, though, is unique, possessing the ability to have multiple personas. And with that, let's get into the gameplay loop. Go to school, join a club or get a job, make some friends.
Oh, hold up, man. You ain't gonna, nah, man. You ain't gonna bring your gangster shit on in this class, nigga. I'll shut your ass up, nigga. This Blueface, baby. Fuck wrong with you, nigga.
Increase your bonds with friends and their associated arcana. Explore the TV world, battle shadows. Level up and gain new personas, fuse personas, boost persona stats based on their arcana. And that's just the day-to-day stuff. Pretty much every month a new victim is kidnapped and thrown inside the TV. It is then up to you and your friends to rescue that person before the heavy fog rolls in, revealing their dead body after the shadows in that world attack the victim. Each person is located inside of a dungeon created by their own subconscious, being held hostage by their own shadow self. So once you get to the final floor, you'll come upon a pretty similar scene each time that goes something like this.
Admit it. You want to be a little bunny hopping around everywhere. No, that's not true. Of course I know it to be true because I am you. No!
Stop, don't.
You're not me!
You then fight and defeat the shadow. The victim finally accepts their shadow self, thus unlocking their persona and joining your team. You'll see this scenario play out about 7 times, and you would think after the 3rd or 4th time somebody would have the bright idea to bring like a tranquilizer gun, or at least a rag soaked in chloroform to knock the victim out and prevent the shadow from going nuts. But I think that kind of gets to the core of Persona 4. It gets repetitive and sometimes even tedious. One aspect I always found annoying was information quest. To find the location of a missing person's dungeon in the TV, you have to find information about them in the real world. This involves talking to nearly every person in town. The order in which you question people matters sometimes, and Even more annoyingly is that some people can only be found on certain days of the week. This annoyance extends to some non-essential quests too. Honestly, this is probably more of a nitpick and ultimately doesn't hurt the overall experience of Persona 4, but losing days in game that should be spent crawling some dungeons because you missed a guy on Tuesday and have to wait until he reappears on Friday really makes my eyes roll. Which brings me to the day cycle system. This has become a mainstay of the Persona series, and with each entry, it's improved upon, and for the most part, I like it. I think everyone does, really. But sometimes you just want to go to the next story beat, and this system can really slow that down. And one last negative before I talk about the best parts, and then finally the reason behind my disappointment. This damn song. It plays so often that I'm starting to hate it. It plays when you save somebody. It plays during nearly every social link conversation. It plays during every major story beat. And it never fucking stops. I can fucking hear it now. Its humming piano haunts my dreams. Stop it! So let's get to the goodies of Persona 4 Golden. The music is great. Not as good as some of the tracks from Persona 5, but it's pretty damn close. Combat is fast, fun, and even challenging. It's better than Persona 3, but not nearly as refined as Persona 5. And I really love the characters. Teddy was the closest to being annoying, of the main cast, but he quickly won me over with his upbeat personality and his story arc. And who doesn't love Nani-chan?
Every day's great at your Junas.
I do have to point out, it seems that the game was pushing you to romance Rise. I do have to point out that it seems the game was pushing you to romance Rise with her constant flirting, which is weird because if you choose to start a relationship with one of the other girls from your party, in my case Chie, Rise will be hitting on you right in front of her.
She's a shady cunt.
I could continue talking about each of the main characters, but that kind of bores me, so I'll move on. Persona 4's story is very good with twists and turns, and I found myself getting really invested. The tone is a lot lighter compared to the other games in the Persona and Shin Megami Tensei series, despite it being a murder mystery. One thing I found very cool was that the game took the time to craft moments of our protagonists just, being normal kids. From the class trips to shopping for ingredients at the grocery store. Those were nice character and camaraderie building moments, even if some did drag on a little too long. When it comes to the social links, I only finished about 8 or so, mostly the ones involving the main cast for, combat benefits. They were fine for the most part, but I mostly cared more about creating more personas than certain friends' character development. But Persona 4 is a narrative-heavy game, and what's equally or maybe even more important to a good story is how that story ends. And Persona 4 ends with a bit of a whimper. You find out who the killer is, chase him through his dungeon, defeat him, then encounter the big bad behind it all. And that's it. You've saved Inaba from the fog, stopped a murderer, and made some great friends along the way. I mean, it's a fine ending, but after Persona 5's, it just felt pretty underwhelming. Which brings me to the disappointment that I foreshadowed in the thumbnail and at the beginning of this video. I'm going to tell you exactly why, after 8 months and over 91 hours of gameplay, I was so disappointed. I didn't fucking finish Marie's social link. I should have goddamn known. She was a golden exclusive character, and I remember wondering, what was her purpose to the story? And it wasn't until it was too late that I realized that she had her own secret dungeon. So the last month of the game, it was a bore. It left me feeling empty. But then I said, oh no, hell no. I maxed out a few more social links, grinded a few more levels, created more powerful personas, sold every fucking item in my inventory because, baby, you got a new game plus going. And of course I'm going to wait quite a while before I attempt another playthrough, but when I do, I'll be ready. However, that wasn't my last bit of disappointment. As it turns out, I missed the true ending of the game. That's right. I missed not only the golden exclusive boss and dungeon, but also the true final dungeon and the fucking super boss. Motherfucking fucker. I know some people will just say watch the ending on YouTube or something. And no, I just can't do that. I have to experience the grind and the challenge for myself. But I hate when games do this type of shit, especially when the game is 100 fucking hours long. Ultimately, I'm not so much disappointed at the game as I am disappointed in myself. I should have done my research, but that's the price you pay when you try to stay away from spoilers. Great game, not perfect, but fucking play it. And don't forget to finish the Marie social link, and don't pack your bags too early. It took me over a year and over 100 hours, but I just finally finished Persona 5, the best AAA Japanese role-playing game released in the past 5 years. And I can firmly say that it is the greatest because after completing Persona 5, I jumped back into another great AAA JRPG released in the last 5 years. Not even close. Dragon Quest XI is the other game that proves console JRPGs aren't dead. They've just been thrown to the sidelines for the first-person Twitch fest, empty sandboxes, and assembly line franchises. I'm not saying anything is wrong with those types of games, but RPGs have turned from niche PC exclusives to the most dominant genre in gaming right now. Even titles that aren't labeled as RPGs have implemented mechanics and systems that date back to Dungeons & Dragons. All the while, the Land of the Rising Suns brand of role-playing has been delegated to the handheld market since the beginning of the 7th generation of consoles, but that's a topic for another day. For now, I want to talk about Persona 5. This review is about the original release, the PS3 version to be precise. As of the typing of this review, Persona 5 Royal has only been released in Japan, with footage already spreading across the interwebs. And maybe with a little luck, this renewed interest will nudge YouTube's algorithm towards this video. Will I play it when it's launched stateside? No, I don't own a PS4, and at this last stage of its life cycle, I don't really see the point. And for the record, I did play Persona 5 on actual PS3 hardware. Our PC S3 doesn't run well on my PC. Speaking of PC, if Atlus sees fit to release Persona 5 Royal on Steam, or God forbid the Epic Store, hell yeah, I'll get it. Heck, I might even pre-order and play day one. Anyway, I've been with Persona since the beginning. Well, since the beginning where the series was relevant with the release of Persona 4, I have dabbed with Persona 1 on PSP, but I think even hardcore fans of those early titles will agree the series really came into its own with the third. And like with Persona 3 and 4, I found it really jarring to jump back into more traditional JRPG fare after Persona 5. Being tugged between dungeon crawling and battling to Persona fusing and customizing to living the life of a high school student and forming relationships. Each of these gameplay elements are interwoven, creating such a unique experience that I just can't help but be excited for whatever Atlus comes out with next. But if I had to point to the main draw of these games for me, and especially Persona 5 in particular, it's the battle system. Building off the previous entries, Atlus has created one of the best battle systems in a JRPG I have ever played. And one of the best parts happens outside of fights. On-screen enemies instead of invisible random encounters has been used since Persona 4, and a welcome growing trend with many JRPGs today. Persona 5 manages to really improve upon it. You can now press yourself up against the wall like Solid Snake and allow enemies to pass by, or wait for the perfect chance to ambush them, gaining an entire round to take out your foes before they can even attack. That's primarily how most encounters will go, but it's pretty easy to be seen and chased by shadows, but if they hit you, they'll get the advantage. However, if you're over leveled, they'll actually run away, which is always pretty cool, I thought. Oh, and sneaking up on those fleeing weaklings will result in an automatic victory in a Persona sometimes. Yeah, I know the AI of the on-screen shadows is kinda shit, taking them a few minutes to actually notice you when you're walking by, and then don't even react to your party when they're right in front of them, and when you're pressed against the wall, you're completely invisible to them for some reason. Some will probably argue that the sneaking mechanic makes avoiding battles too easy, but Persona 3 and 4 sneaking was complete shit, and Persona 5 was a step in the right direction. Now to actual combat. Weaknesses, status effects, buffs, and debuffs that actually matter is a hallmark of the Persona series and its larger Shin Megami family. Choosing the right characters, personas, and skills can mean the difference between a quick, easy fight and a ball-busting battle. This is the reason jumping into Dragon Quest, or really any JRPG, feels stale and slow after Persona 5. Pinpointing enemy weaknesses and exploiting them leads to knocking them down and sending in your party for the beatdown that 9 times out of 10 will end the fight. It just works, and I love it. And not to mention all the perks and skills you gain by advancing your confidants. And I love how nearly every button is used to streamline actions and reduce the amount of menu navigation seen in most games of the genre. TLDR, Persona 5's battle system is damn near perfect and fucking rocks. The story is where I give Persona 5 less praise. For the most part, I liked it. There are a couple of clever twists thrown in to keep you guessing, but I guess that the story was strongest during the first 2/3 before devolving into a more traditional and generic save the world plot. However, to discuss the beginning and main motivations for the Phantom Thieves, I think it'd be worth noting what was going on around the time of the game's release and when I started my playthrough. We had the explosion of the Me Too movement and Time Up hashtag, started in part by the Brett Kavanaugh hearings and the whole Harvey Weinstein allegations that apparently turned out to be true. Obviously, Persona 5's story was written long before, but it's hard not to notice the parallels between our current political and social climate and the narrative of Persona 5. Regardless of how you feel about those topics, it's great to see games attempt more mature and relevant stories. Anywho, the thing that kicks off the Phantom Thieves and their crusade against shitty adults was the sexual and physical abuse perpetrated by Kamoshita, the athletic instructor at their school, towards Sexion and other students. You roleplay as a high school student delinquent that teams up with a cat, a jerk, and a hottie and infiltrate the cognitive palace and steal the treasure of Kamoshita, thus causing a change of heart with the help of a supernatural app and your personas. As the game continues, you'll find new teammates as well as targets, and that's more or less how the story will go. Like in previous entries, you'll be given a time limit of sorts by when the change of heart must be completed. Though I have to admit, these deadlines feel a bit more contrived than past games. Using Kamoshita as an example again, his heart has to be changed before the next teacher's meeting, during which he was going to get you and Ryuji expelled. I mean, couldn't he have just gone straight to the principal? You know, the same principal that's covering up Kamoshita's abuse, I might add, and get you two kicked out right then and there? Well, the circumstances for the deadlines do get better, but I think the handling of Persona 4's deadline felt much more urgent because they literally meant the difference between life and death. So I'm about to get into some spoilers right here. Odds are all three of you that are watching this review have played and beaten Persona 5, but if not, jump to this timestamp down below right there. It was pretty obvious that Shido was going to play a big part in the story from very early on, given that he was the reason for the protagonist's probation, and he kept popping up here and there. And I think that would have been fine with him being the big bad. He had history with not just you, but all the other characters somewhat. He fit the Phantom Thieves' MO, plus he was the odds-on favorite to be elected as Japan's new prime minister. And I, for one, fully expected the fight against Shido to be the final battle of the game. Sure, you would have had the whole kind of save the world type thing going on, but, you know, you would have saved Japan from a corrupt murderer from taking control of the government. But instead it turns out that the big bad is a mad god, and he feels that it has the right to control the world and its people, and if not, then the world should be destroyed. No, I get it. You're taking down abusers, corporate moguls, politicians that see others as less than human and will stop at nothing to achieve their goals. So throwing in a god that looks at humanity the same way, you know, it seems like the next logical step to basically increase the drama and raise the stakes. But was it necessary? And then when you toss in the fact that the whole metaverse and the source of your power comes from this god in an attempt at a rigged game to decide the fate of the world, it just feels kind of dumb and a letdown. Except for the supernatural elements, which is, you know, totally cool because it's a video game after all, the story has been so grounded in its dealing with real life issues of jealousy and greed and depression up to this point. I'm not sure if it needed to be anything else. I don't know how other people feel about this, and I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. Leave a comment, you know, right down there. Yeah. In a 100+ hour game, apart from the story and overall gameplay, the characters, both playable and not, are very important, and I think Persona 5 does a very good job. This wasn't my favorite cast of characters, but for the most part I do like my teammates. My personal favorites are Morgana and Mokoto, so I'll talk about them first. No, thinking back, I have to liken Mona to Vivi from Final Fantasy IX, just with a lot more spunk. The little guy is a lost soul that struggles to find his place in the world, having no memories of his past or purpose. I guess his story could kind of be seen as a metaphor for growing up and trying to figure out who you are, just in a much more literal way. And by the way, his fate after the final battle was super lame and deserves a rewrite. Next is Makoto. I really like this chick, and no, I didn't do the romance option with her. After joining the party, she takes on a leadership position on the team rather quickly, which kind of makes sense. She's the oldest, she's the class president, and really the most mature. Kind of reminds me of Mitsuru from Persona 3, just without the stick up her ass. Makoto is rational and calm, thinking up many of the gang's plans. We're always hearing that we need more female representation in games. Well, here you go. Makoto can be smart and strong while also feeling vulnerable and relatable. And much of her character development wasn't limited to her confidant storyline, unlike most of the other Phantom Thieves. She starts out investigating the Phantom Thieves' activities within their school at the request of the principal. Well, not really a request, more of a veiled threat. You see, Makoto feels pressured to excel in her studies and be accepted into a good college because of her home life. This has led her to having an unhealthy obedience to authority, a trait the school's principal takes full advantage of by threatening to write a poor recommendation letter and hurting her reputation. However, her interactions with the Phantom Thieves allows Makoto to overcome her self-doubt and stand alongside them. The rest of the group was sort of hit or miss for me. Once Futaba opens up, she's really funny. Yusuke was kind of bland. An was hot but teetered on annoying. Haru was just sort of there, and Ryuji was an ass. I'm not a huge fan of large character pools in my RPGs, but that's just kind of how the genre works. Designers like to give you many options to customize your party with, but I'd rather that customization comes from how you train your characters and level them up. But where I think a large party hurts a game, especially like Persona 5, is in the dialogue sequences. And Persona 5 has a ton, and they are really long. Whether it's cutscenes, meetings, or text message, every fucking member has something to say. And a lot of times individual lines seem to be thrown in just to make sure you know that person is still there, or to make sure the devs are getting their money's worth out of each voice actor. I wish I could think of an example, but once you get all the party members, I'm sure you'll notice. I guess I should mention the social links, or confidants as they're called in this game. They're fine. None really stick out, but I have to admit I didn't really finish any, which by the end made me feel a little sad. A few I actually really liked, they just weren't as memorable as, say, the dying guy from Persona 3. It was a nice feature that leveling up certain ones would actually give you passive abilities during combat, as I mentioned before, but there was more than a few times I was forced to grind social stats to continue raising confidant ranks. It kind of makes me want to start a new game plus where social links will carry over, so I don't have to max out those confidants again and finally complete those side stories. And now for a few last minute things. The game has such a great style to it. From scene transitions to the color palette to menu animations, Persona 5 is just a great looking game, even if its graphic fidelity isn't on par with more current generation games. Even buying items has a flair to it, even though the shopkeepers have to utter the same 2 or 3 lines each time you hit the buy button. Kind of annoying, honestly. And that's it. A review over a year in the making is complete. In closing, Persona 5 is a great game. I hope all of you that have played it loved it as much as I did. And for those that haven't tried it, give it a shot. I can honestly say it's one of the greatest JRPGs ever released, despite a few hiccups and nitpicks. I give Persona 5 a 10 out of 10 penis demons.
Algorithm.